Saterdag 1 Oktober 2022. Nou ja, ons ou gedig wat sê Oktober is die mooiste maand. En dit kan die mooiste maand wees. Daar's 'n paar lelike dinge wat aan die gang is, maar ek dink dat hier is 'n klomp goed wat besig om na die eindpunt te. Daar is situasies en insidente en dinge wat by die limits verby is. En dis nou maar net 'n logiese gevolg dat die goed gaan in mekaar val. Ek gaan nog 'n Briekmerke maak oor dit wat gebeur het in Johannesburg, by daai munisipaliteit, met daai burgemeester en so. Maar ons moet al hierdie goed maar so sien as als deel van 'n groter prentjie. Die ding waaroor ek vanoggend wil praat in hierdie Briekmerke is Putin se toespraak wat hy gelewer het met die inlywing van die Donbass-streke by Rusland. Nou ja, dit gaan my nou seker weer 'n klomp kritiek op die hals haal, maar dit is so dat hier in Suid-Afrika is 'n klomp Afrikaners wat regtig identifiseer met die Russe, omdat hulle na die feite kyk. Ja, daar is 'n klomp wat nou weer, jy weet, nog lekker goed geïndoktrineer is met die rooi gevaar shit, en hulle sal altyd hulle opinies hê. Die probleem wat ons het, is, ons as Westerlinge, is dat vir baie dekades is ons gebullshit en belieg oor wat regtig in Rusland aan die gang is. En toe hierdie kakspul nou in Februarie losbars in die Oekraïne, toe wil ons almal nou deelneem aan dit wat daar aan die gang is, maar ons sit in 'n kaksituasie dat ons het nie feite nie. Ons het net die informasie wat die Westerse pers vir ons gee. En ek was self een van daai ouens wat baie vinnig Oekraïne se kant gekies het en op die Russe gekak het en so. En toe op 'n dag toe maak ek 'n stupid post op Twitter en 'n joernalis wys my so op 'n privaat boodskap wys my toe 'n bietjie die rigting. En toe het ek die Donbass goed begin navors. Nie navors. Ek gaan soek vir informasie soveel as wat ek kan kry. Eers like op daai stadium het nie eens gefok en weet daar's 'n plek soos die Donbass nie, man. Maar in elk geval, hoe meer ek gelees het, hoe meer het ek tot die besef gekom dat die Russe in die Donbass bevind hulle in dieselfde situasie as wat die Afrikaner in Suid-Afrika. Ons was ewe skielik ontneem van ons vaderland. En ons is eintlik ongewenstes in ons eie land. En dis wat met die Russe in die Donbass ook gebeur het. Nou Putin se toespraak sal natuurlik nou weer nie oordentlik deur die Westerse media weergegee word nie, en daar sal net so hier en daar 'n klein stukkie uitgetrek word en dan 'n kakstorie daaroor gemaak word. En ek het net gevoel, dit is nodig dat ons net bietjie perspektief kry en bietjie die vergrootglas sit op 'n paar van die dinge wat hy gesê het, want dit is belangrike goed wat hy gesê het. Ek sal in hierdie video, sal ek sy description, sal ek 'n link sit na die artikel waar die weergawe van Putin se toespraak gepubliseer is. En dit is vir ons belangrik om daai ding deur te lees, want ons vind goeie aanklank. Nou, voor ek met die hele toespraak kom, gaan ek nou 'n paar goedjies hanteer. Hier's nou net so hoofpunte van sy toespraak. Putin slams anti-democratic, deceitful and hypocritical West. The West is searching for a chance to weaken and destroy Russia. They are haunted by its existence. The United States is the only power to use nuclear weapons twice, which set a precedent. The unipolar world built by the West is anti-democratic, deceitful and hypocritical. Sanctions are not enough for the Anglo-Saxons, they are organized acts of sabotage. The Anglo-Saxons have organized acts of sabotage because sanctions are not enough for them. The West lies as recklessly as Goebbels. Truth is drowned in an ocean of myths, illusion and fakes. Dit is sterk woorde, en ek wil hê jy moet kennis neem daarvan. Putin is die eerste Russiese leier in die geskiedenis wat die Weste reguit aanvat en hierdie goed reguit vir hulle sê. In die verlede, dit was goed wat daar in die privaatkamers vir mekaar gesê is en so. Putin het die guts gehad gister om dit op 'n wêreldverhoog al hierdie goed te sê. En ons moet let daarop hoor. Ons moet kennis neem daarvan. En dit is interessant vir my is hoe hy die Anglo-Saxons uitsonder. En ek het ook al gesien daai Maria Zakharova en daai Dmitri Medvedev. Hulle looi die Engelse hoor. Ek dink die Engelse moet baie mooi dink oor wat hulle besig is om te doen, want die fok weet, dit lyk vir my die Russe lek hulle lippe af vir Engeland hoor. En hulle weet, ek het eendag 'n video gekyk, hulle weet, Engeland, Rusland sal nie met Engeland 'n oorlog maak nie. Een Poseidon missiel van 'n duikboot gelanseer, en Engeland is van die map af. In elk geval, hier is nog 'n stukkie. Russia will always be Russia. Putin's full speech and accession of former Ukrainian territories. By defending its existence and repairing historic injustices, Russia is defying hegemonic and colonial West. En Putin trek nie sy houe nie hoor. Hy lê in, en wat hy sê, is die waarheid. As jy nie met hom saamstem nie, bring jou feite. Hier is nog 'n snippet. The West can't feed people with their banknotes. They need energy to tell their populations to wrap up. Do we want here in Russia, instead of mother and father, parent number 1 and parent number 2 and parent number 3, has the West gone mad, encouraging sex changes for our children? No, we have our own future. En dit is baie belangrik. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them, as the Bible says, applies to the West's policies. Putin concludes his speech, the Donetsk Republic, Lugansk Republic, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions have made their choice. Truth is on our side, Russia is on our side. En dis sterk goed wat hy hier sê hoor. En dan kom hy fucking Bojo die clown en hy maak hierdie tweet. Vladimir Putin, your speech is a fraud and a disgrace. The world must never accept your sham referendums or your cruel and illegal attempts to colonize Ukraine. We stand with the people of Ukraine and will support them without flinching until their country is whole and free. En ek het vir Bojo the clown net een woord, fuck off. Waar kom hy aan hierdie kak om hierdie goed kwyt te raak van Rusland wat daai goed koloniseer? Hy kom uit 'n fucking land uit wat die wêreld probeer koloniseer het en hulle het mense uitgemoor by die miljoene. Kyk wat het die donders met my voorsate gedoen hier in Suid-Afrika. Kyk wat het hulle met die Indiërs gedoen in Indië. 7 miljoen doodgemaak met hongersnood omdat hulle kos gesteel het. Fuck hierdie UK. Kyk, ek gaan nie lank op dit spandeer nie, want ek het 'n kak in 'n Engelse dat julle nie weet hoe groot is dit nie. Hulle het my voorvaders vermoor en verongeluk en die vrouens en kinders uitgeteer en verhonger en verkrag en opgefok in daai konsentrasiekampe. Die sleg bliksemse goed. Maar onthou dit altyd. Die Britte het met 400,000 man gekom Suid-Afrika toe en Suid-Afrikaanse boere, 20,000 het hulle op hulle moer gegee. Dan wil hulle kak soek met Rusland. Die Russe gaan vir hulle opfok, net 1 pou. En dit sal 'n goeie ding wees, maar kom ek klim van daai kak af hoor. Kom ons kom by Putin se toespraak. Nou gaan ek 'n paar stukkies lees uit sy toespraak uit, maar ek sal die link in hierdie ding sit, dat jy dit self op jou eie tyd gaan deurlees, en lees dit en dink oor wat jy daar. Putin het 'n klomp kragtige goed gesê hoor. Russia will always be Russia. Putin's full speech on accession of the former Ukrainian territories. By recognizing the free will of the residents of Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, Russia has embraced the people who share its history and culture and repaired some of the injustices created by the Soviet Union and its destruction, President Vladimir Putin said in Moscow on Friday. Ukraine intended for Russian speakers within its borders the same fate the colonial West wants to inflict upon the entire world in its desire for hegemony, he added. Nou kyk, dis opvallend hoe hy die Weste as koloniste label, en dit is die waarheid. Today we will sign treaties on the accession of the Donetsk People's Republic, Lugansk People's Republic, Zaporizhia region and Kherson region to the Russian Federation. It is undoubtedly their right, an inherent right sealed in Article 1 of the UN Charter, which directly states the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. En dit is 'n ding wat ons as Suid-Afrikaners ook fucking graag wil hê, selfbeskikking. Dis wat Putin is, vir daai Russe gaan gee het in die Donbass. Ek wens ons het 'n Putin gehad. We will always remember the heroes of the Russian Spring, those who refused to accept the new Nazi coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014, all those who died for the right to speak their native language, to preserve their culture, traditions and religion, and for the very right to live. We remember the soldiers of Donbass, the martyrs of the Odessa Katyn, the victims of inhumane terrorist attacks carried out by Kiev regime. We commemorate volunteers and militiamen, civilians, children, women, senior citizens, Russians, Ukrainians, people of various nationalities. Kyk, ek gaan nie die hele ding lees nie, maar dit is 'n moerse lang speech, jy weet. Nou, julle kan gerus doen jouself 'n guns en volg die skakel en gaan lees hierdie ou se gesprek. Behind the choice of millions of residents in the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics is our common destiny and thousand-year history. People have passed this spiritual connection on to their children and grandchildren. Despite all the trials they endured, they carried the love for Russia through the years. This is something no one can destroy. That is why both older generations and young people, those who were born after the tragic collapse of the Soviet Union, have voted for our unity, for our common future. Ek het eendag gekyk na 'n onderhoud wat joernalis gehad het met Putin waar hulle oor hierdie goed gepraat het. En het Putin net gesê, die grootste tragedie van die ineenstorting van die Sowjetunie was die simpel feit dat miljoene Russe het die volgende oggend wakker geword en skielik was hulle in vreemde plekke. Hulle het nie meer 'n vaderland gehad nie. En in daai selfde gesprek het hy gesê, hy beskou homself as die president van alle Russe enige plek in die wêreld. En as hulle swaar kry, sal hy hulle help as hy kan. In 1991, in Belalovskaya, Pucha, representatives of the party elite of that time made a decision to terminate the Soviet Union without asking ordinary citizens what they wanted. And people suddenly found themselves cut off from their homeland. En dit is belangrik om te kyk. En dan kom die Weste nou uit en maak hier allerlei stories oor dat daai referendums en daar was onwettig. Maar is genoeg bewyse van hoeveel keer die Weste presies daai selfde gereedskap gebruik het om hulle doelwitte te doen. En Putin bewys dit uit dat hoeveel van die ou Sowjetrepublieke het die Weste kwansy se referendums gehou en skielik daai mense as onafhanklik beskou nog voordat daai referendum uitslaa eers uitgekom het. En daar was baie plekke waar in Oekraïne self het 70% van die mense teen dit gestem om uit die Russiese Federasie uit te gaan. Maar jy weet wat het die Weste gedoen? I can admit that they didn't even know what they were doing and what consequences their actions would have in the end. But it doesn't matter now. There is no Soviet Union anymore. We cannot return to the past. Actually, Russia no longer needs it today. This isn't our ambition. But there is nothing stronger than the determination of millions of people who by their culture, religion, traditions and language consider themselves part of Russia, whose ancestors lived in a single country for centuries. There is nothing stronger than their determination to return to their true historical homeland. For 8 long years, people in Donbass were subjected to genocide, shelling and blockades. In Kherson, Zaporizhia, a criminal policy was pursued to cultivate hatred for Russia, for everything Russian. Now too, during the referendums, the Kiev regime threatened school teachers, women who worked in election commissions with reprisals and death. Kiev threatened millions of people who came to express their will with repression. But the people of Donbass, Zaporizhia and Kherson, weren't broken and they had their say. En dis belangrik. Ek wil net vir julle sê, een ding wat ons nie onsself oor moet bluf nie. Daar kom groot kak vir die Weste in die Oekraïne. Daar kom kak vir hulle. Mense praat stront oor, ja, Rusland sukkel met die Oekraïense weermag en al. Se gat man, die Russe gebruik in Oekraïne tot op datum minder as 5% van hulle militêre mag. En hulle het nie hulle heel modernste wapens op die slagveld nie. Hulle het wapens op die slagveld gesit wat gematch het dit wat die Oekraïne het. En toe by die Weste begin met al hierdie wapens wat hulle daar instoot, het die Russe ook aan hulle kant bietjie opgetune, maar hulle het nie alles gewys nie want hulle het geweet. Dis wat NATO wil sien, hulle wil sien waartoe is die Russe in staat. Maar nou is die prentjie verander daar. Dis nou nie meer 'n special military operation nie. Hulle verdedig nou Rusland se grense. En ek het gisterand foto's gesien van die tanks en goed wat op pad is soontoe. Dis die heel nuwe goed. Die Weste is in vir 'n kakspil daar. Hulle gaan 'n fucking losing kry wat hulle nie gou gaan vergeet nie. En man, dit maak nou nie saak hoe oningelig jy is nie. Moet net nie in 'n droomwêreld leef en dink NATO is 'n match vir Rusland nie. NATO is nie 'n match vir Rusland nie. I want the Kiev authorities and their true handlers in the West to hear me now. And I want everyone to remember this. The people living in Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia have become our citizens forever. We call on Kiev regime to immediately cease fire and all hostilities, to end the war if it unleashed back in 2014 and return to the negotiating table. We are ready for this, as we have said more than once, but the choice of the people in Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson will not be discussed. The decision has been made and Russia will not betray it. Kiev's current authorities should respect this free expression of the people's will. There is no other way. This is the only way to peace. En dit is belangrik. Maar die Weste is besig met 'n ding daar. En ek het vanoggend weer gevra, wat die fok is die Weste so franties besig om te beskerm in die Oekraïne? Hulle is bereid om 'n moerse klomp lande basies bankrot te maak met die geld wat hulle daar indruk en hulle ontwapen die hele NATO. Maar nee, niemand antwoord my daai vraag nie. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the West decided that the world and all of us would permanently accede to its dictates. In 1991, the West thought that Russia would never rise after such shocks and would fall to pieces on its own. This almost happened. We remember the horrible 90s, hungry, cold and hopeless, but Russia remained standing, came alive, grew stronger and occupied its rightful place in the world. Meanwhile, the West continued and continues looking for another chance to strike a blow at us, to weaken and break up Russia, which they have always dreamed about, to divide our state and set our people against each other, and to condemn them to poverty and extinction. They cannot rest easy knowing that there is such a great country with this huge territory in the world, with its natural wealth, resources and people who cannot and will not do something else's bidding. Dit is belangrik dat hy kennis neem van wat hy hier sê. En ek moet vir julle sê, in hierdie, as jy die gesprek, die toespraak mooi gaan lees en jy kyk krities na die ding en analiseer, dan gaan jy sien Rusland het Kobai gesê vir die Weste. En Europa gaan die prys betaal. The West is ready to cross every line to preserve the new colonial system which allows it to live off the world, to plunder it thanks to the domination of the dollar and technology, to collect an actual tribute from humanity, to extract its primary source of unearned prosperity, the rent paid to the hegemon. The preservation of this annuity is their main, real and absolute self-serving motivation. This is why total de-sovereignization is in their interest. This explains their aggression towards independent states, traditional values and authentic cultures, their attempts to undermine international and integration processes, new global currencies and technological development centers they cannot control. It is critically important to them to force all countries to surrender to their sovereignty to the United States. En dis die waarheid wat hy daar sê. In certain countries, the ruling elites voluntarily agree to do this. Voluntarily agree to become vassals. Others are bribed or intimidated, and it does not work. They destroy entire states, leaving behind humanitarian disasters, devastation, ruins, millions of wrecked and mangled human lives, terrorist enclaves, social disaster zones, protectorates, colonies and semi-colonies. They don't care. All they care about is their own benefit. En dit is die waarheid wat hy daar praat. Dis wat die Weste gedoen het vir die laaste man van na die Tweede Wêreldoorlog af. En ongelukkig daai tyd nou uitgeloop. I want to underscore again that their insatiability and determination to preserve their unfettered dominance are the real causes for the hybrid war that the collective West is waging against Russia. They do not want us to be free. They want us to be a colony. They do not want equal cooperation. They want to loot. They do not want to see a free society, but a mass of soulless slaves. Fuck boys. Dis presies ons wat aangaan. They see our thought and our philosophy as a direct threat. That is why they target our philosophers for assassination. Our culture and art present a danger to them, so they are trying to ban them. Our development and prosperity are also a threat to them, because competition is growing. They do not want or need Russia, but we do. I would like to remind you that in the past, ambitions of world domination have repeatedly shattered against the courage of and resilience of our people. Russia will always be Russia. We will continue to defend our values and our motherland. Die Weste moet pas op. Hulle is regtig op dun ys hoor. The West is counting on impunity, on being able to get away with anything. As a matter of fact, this was actually the case until recently. Strategic security agreements have been trashed. Agreements reached at the highest political level have been declared. Tall tales, firm promises not to expand NATO to the east gave way to dirty deception as soon as our former leaders bought into them. Missile defense, intermediate range and short range missile treaties have been unilaterally dismantled and under far-fetched pretext. Ek weet nie, dit is jammer dat die pers nie hierdie ou so goed oordentlik belig vir die populasie van die Weste om te sien nie. And all we hear is the West is insisting on a rule-based order. Where did that come from anyway? Who has ever seen these rules? Who agreed or approved them? Listen, this is just a lot of nonsense, utter deceit, double standards, or even triple standards. They must think we are stupid. Russia is a great 1,000-year-old power, a whole civilization, and it is not going to live by such makeshift false rules. Western elites not only deny national sovereignty and international law, their hegemony has pronounced features of totalitarianism, despotism, and apartheid. They brazenly divide the world into their vassals. the so-called civilized countries, and all the rest, who according to the designs of today's Western racists should be added to the list of barbarians and savages. False labels like rogue country or authoritarian regime are already available and are used to stigmatize entire nations and states, which is nothing new. There is nothing new in this. Deep down, the Western elites have remained the same colonizers. They discriminate and divide peoples into the top tier and the rest. Nou ja, ek gaan nou nie, dit is 'n redelike lang toespraak soos wat Putin is, maar ek stel voor dat jy volg hierdie skakel en gaan lees die ding vir jouself. The Western countries have been saying for centuries that they bring freedom and democracy to other nations. Nothing could be further from the truth. Instead of bringing democracy, they suppressed and exploited, and instead of giving freedom, they enslaved and oppressed. The unipolar world is inherently anti-democratic and unfree. It is false and hypocritical through and through. The United States is the only country in the world that has used nuclear weapons twice, destroying the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, and they created a president. Nou, dis mos die waarheid wat hy daar praat. Dit is wat gebeur het. The United States left a deep scar in the memory of the people of Korea and Vietnam with their carpet bombings and use of napalm and chemical weapons. It actually continues to occupy Germany, Japan, the Republic of Korea and other countries, which they cynically refer to as equals and allies. Look now, what kind of alliance is that? The whole world knows that the top officials in these countries are being spied on and that their offices and homes are bugged. It's a disgrace for those who do this and for those who, like slaves, silently and meekly swallow this arrogant behavior. They call the orders and threats that make to their vassals Euro-Atlantic solidarity and the creation of biological weapons and the use of human test subjects, including in Ukraine, noble medical research. Ja, dit is wat hulle doen. Boys, ek wag nog vir meer inligting om uit te kom oor daai biolabs. Die Russe het baie inligting daar gekry. Maar ek dink hulle wag vir die regte tyd om daai bomme te. Washington demands more and more sanctions against Russia, and the majority of European politicians obediently go along with it. They clearly understand that by pressuring the EU to completely give up Russian energy and other resources, the United States is practically pushing Europe towards deindustrialization in a bid to get its hands on the entire European market. These European elites understand everything. They do, but they prefer to serve the interest of others. This is no longer civility, but direct betrayal of their own peoples. God bless. It is up to them. But the Anglo-Saxons believe sanctions are no longer enough and now have turned to subversion. It seems incredible, but it is a fact. By causing explosions on the Nord Stream's international gas pipelines passing along the bottom of the Baltic Sea, they have actually embarked on the destruction of Europe's entire energy infrastructure. It is clear to everyone who stands to gain. Those who benefit are responsible, of course. People cannot be fed with printed dollars and euros. You can't feed them with those pieces of paper. And the virtual inflated capitalization of Western social media companies can't heat their homes. Everything I am saying is important. And what I just said is no less so. You can't feed anyone with paper. You need food. And you can't heat anyone's home with these inflated capitalizations. You need energy. En dit is waar en dit is groot woorde. Maar nou ja, die mense luister nie. That is why politicians in Europe have to convince their fellow citizens to eat less, take a shower less often, and dress warmer at home. And those who start asking fair questions like why is that in fact, are immediately declared enemies, extremists, and radicals. They point back at Russia and say, that is the source of all your troubles. More lies. I want to make special note of the fact that there is every reason to believe that the Western elites are not going to look for constructive ways out of the global food and energy crisis that they, and they alone, are to blame for as a result of their long-term policy, dating back long before our special military operations in Ukraine in Donbass. They have no intention of solving the problems of injustice and inequality. I am afraid they would rather use other formulas they are more comfortable with. Die Westerse mense, die burgers van die Weste, moet luister wat hierdie ou sê. Hy waarsku ons almal. They do not give a damn about the natural right of billions of people, the majority of humanity, to freedom and justice, the right to determine their own future. They have already moved on to the radical denial of moral, religious and family values. Let's answer some very simple questions for ourselves. Now I would like to return to what I said and want to address also all citizens in the country, not just the colleagues that are in the hall, but all citizens of Russia. Do we want to have here in our country, in Russia, parent number 1, parent number 2, parent number 3? They have completely lost it. Instead of mother and father, do we want our schools to impose on our children from their earliest days in school perversions that lead to degradation and extinction? Do we want to drum into their heads the ideas that certain other genders exist along with women and men, and to offer them gender reassignment surgery? Is that what we want for our country and our children? This is unacceptable to us. We have a different future of our own. Let me repeat that the dictatorship of the Western elites targets all societies, including the citizens of Western countries themselves. This is a challenge to all, this complete renunciation of what it means to be human, the overthrow of faith and traditional values, and the suppression of freedom are coming to resemble religion in reverse, pure Satanism, exposing false messiahs. Jesus Christ said in the Sermon on the Mount, "By their fruits you shall know them." These poisonous fruits are already obvious to the people, and not only in our country, but also in all countries, including many people in the West itself. Pois, hier is nog baie, ek gaan nou nie verder dit lees nie, ek stel voor julle moet hierdie ding gaan vat en hom stadig deurlees. And I want to close with the words of a true patriot, Ivan Ilyin. If I consider Russia my motherland, that means that I love as a Russian, contemplate and think, sing and speak as a Russian, that I believe in the spiritual strength of the Russian people. Its spirit is my spirit, its destiny is my destiny, its suffering is my grief, and its prosperity is my joy. Behind these words stands a glorious spiritual choice, which for more than 1,000 years of Russian statehood was followed by many generations of our ancestors. Today we are making this choice. The citizens of the Donetsk and Lugansk People Republic and the residents of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions have made this choice. They made the choice to be with their people, to be with their motherland, to share in its destiny, and to be victorious together with it. The truth is with us, and behind us is Russia. Nou ja, dis nou eintlik 'n bloody long ding hierdie, maar dis fucking belangrik dat ons kennis neem van wat Putin sê hoor. Die ou is die eerste leier wat openlik die Weste aan die keel gryp en skud en vir die wêreld sê presies wat is die elite besig om te beplan vir ons almal. Nou ja, kap maar 'n like en subscribe en share hierdie ding en dankie vir julle ondersteuning en geduld.